I got involved. The script was floating around for a while, and it was on something called the Blood List in Hollywood, which means, there's this list that floats around agencies of like the best horror movies that are about to get made, or the most coveted movies that, they think they're gonna turn out really well. And I read the script, my assistant read it, and she was like, "This is a great movie." And I was like, "It is so interesting, and it is so different from anything I've ever done and I've been reading lately." And that was that. I mean, I called my agent and I was like, "I really love this." And we started talking to everybody, and here I am now. I mean, it's definitely nothing that I've ever done. I don't even know if I've ever played married in a movie before. And I've never done a psychological thriller or a straight thriller. I've done a horror comedy before with Jennifer's Body, but I've never done this specific genre before. I've never done anything sort of bloody or gory, and it just had a lot of elements that I've never played on screen before. Well, initially we were talking about shooting this movie in winter here. So all of the scenes outside in the snow, we were going to actually be shooting in the snow. So, a good 2/3 of the movie, I was thinking, how are we going to do it logistically? Like, because initially my character was in a wedding dress the whole time and no shoes. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to make this work. How am I going to get pulled into a frozen lake? And I just don't understand how it's going to happen. And then because of everything that's gone on with the world, we ended up pushing to summer. And so now we're doing everything on a soundstage now. And that's obviously much easier. I mean, we've all been freezing cold before, so you just remember what that feels like. And, you make your body shake and you hyperventilate and you breathe differently. And I'm telling you, that's a lot better than actually being freezing cold for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 or 5 weeks, because that's going to break you down, and then you're not going to have the energy to do any kind of acting. So I'd rather have to fake it. Yeah, what I would say is that filming that last scene first, what that did for me was it grounded me. I actually have like a much higher speaking voice than how I'm even speaking right now. And having to do all of those fighting sequences and being genuinely exhausted and like kind of getting hurt through the process, just because you get beat up when you do fight scenes, that naturally like pulls my energy lower into my body and grounds me and gives me a more like rounded, it changes my voice and it changes the way I deliver lines. So that put me in a good space. It took me out of like a more girly head voice that I normally have and took me into a better voice and a better disposition for the character. Emma, poor Emma. Emma was a photographer at some point. She's a survivor of having been attacked at a certain point in her life and been a part of convicting that person and sending them to prison. She is not so happily married, and she reaps the consequences of her actions within her marriage in a surprisingly disgusting, horrifying way. I think that Emma's relationship with Mark is, they've been married for a while. He was never the best husband. He was never faithful. He was never engaged. He was never attentive. He was never kind. And so through the years, she's shut down, and I think there's not much left bonding them at this point. And, she's found affection or attention elsewhere now. And, a conflict is arising between them within their marriage. Well, she's very resilient, that's for sure. She's smart, and I think that she has a good heart. She's just been pushed to a place where she hasn't been making the best decisions, but I think at a certain point she was really giving it her all. So I have a lot of respect for her, actually. Yeah, I mean, Tom is somebody who she met and felt some kind of a connection with. It'd probably been so long since she'd felt any kind of a connection, since she had been seen. And I feel like their relationship is pretty fresh, the relationship between Emma and Tom. However, I don't think he was just a distraction either. I think it was just, she was starting to feel alive again and maybe consider, like, it's time for me to get out of this relationship and out of this marriage, because it obviously isn't working for me. Look at what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? So he's sort of the catalyst for her to realize the deficiencies within her own marriage. For me, preparing for this, I didn't have to do anything really physically specific. I've done a lot of action sequences and action movies and stunts, and that's one of my favorite things to do with movies, actually. I feel like I have like a knack for that, and I'm pretty decent with them. So there wasn't a lot of physical preparation that I went through, but psychologically, I mean, I obviously work with an acting coach now, and we break down what's going on in the scenes and what's going on in her mind, behind her words, behind the words that are written on the page. And, I think we've all had an experience that lends itself to this, the first part of the movie, at least, in some way, at some point in our lives, and so there's that to draw on as well. So the way I would explain the idea that there could be a connection between a victim and an abuser or an attacker, I explain everything from a spiritual aspect. So for me, when any kind of act of violence occurs, there's a karmic situation that's created where now that karma is either being settled from a past life with that act, or you're incurring new karma that will carry on into another lifetime between these two souls, not necessarily these two humans, but these souls who are here to play a part for each other, to learn lessons, to transcend challenges. So for me, I absolutely believe there's some kind of a spiritual connection. I hesitate to call it a bond, because that we associate a bond with being a good thing or a positive, warm feeling thing. But there is definitely an energetic connection. There's like a tear, in that fabric of creation that does connect us all, and then it has to be sewn back together, and only those two souls can make that happen. Oh, I mean, I think she felt like she was minding her own business, and she was attacked and didn't understand why, and the attack was brutal, and she was harmed, and she was traumatized, and she lives with those images and those sounds and those smells and that trauma. Still, you don't just get over that. She has, post-traumatic stress syndrome from that experience. So he scarred her, literally, he physically scarred her, but scarred her mentally and emotionally as well. Oh, I love it. He's so talented. Callan is such a talented actor, and he's so humble and giving, and he's so lovely. And he's also he's very physical. So the stunt sequences are pretty intense with him because he goes pretty full force with them. I mean, I think the Jimmy character adds layers to Bobby Ray, because you get to see him not just as like a cold villain or a two-dimensional character. You see him, loving and caring for another person, and so you realize that we're all, even those of us that do hurtful things or horrible things, we're all human and we're all multi-layered, and it's always more complicated than it seems on the surface. I mean, I think most women have this strength in us already, because we've all lived, whether or not we've been physically attacked in this way, most of us have suffered through some kind of extreme emotional abuse or mental abuse at some point in our lives, whether it was at the hands of our own family members or people who have employed us or people we've been forced to be around. So I think we're also resilient already. Just being a woman in this society makes you resilient. So I feel like I have a lot of those qualities as well. Obviously, I've never had to survive something to this degree, and don't know that I could. I mean, I could for my kids, obviously, but, you know, it's that, at a certain point, it's that fight or flight that kicks in because life longs for itself. You know, you want to live, and so you can survive almost anything. You can find the will to survive almost anything. Yeah, Scott makes the set very organized. He's so easygoing, and he's just calm. He obviously has had a lot of time to plan this movie, and he's very well organized. He's patient, and he's very open to suggestions and like working with the actors and changing things that need to change. And he's been great to work with. He's been so lovely. I think a lot of the conversations we actually had in the beginning were about the wedding dress scenario, because there was another movie that came out, which was actually a great movie, where the lead character was in a wedding dress the whole time. And it was a thriller and a horror movie as well. And we were like, how are we going to solve this issue? Because we don't want to repeat something, you know. We want to be iconic. We want it to be different. So he and I worked together a lot on how we could change that. And I was FaceTiming with him, obviously, because we couldn't be together at the time. And I was like, what if Emma puts on the tuxedo? Why does she have to put on the wedding dress? Fuck that. If that guy did this to me and I see the wedding dress hanging over there, I'm going to be like, fuck you, I'm not wearing that wedding dress. No thanks, I'll take your tuxedo. Bye. And so we changed that whole aspect of the movie. And so now we have this really iconic costume, which I think echoes that same message of like women feeling empowered or women taking their power back or changing, you know, gender perceptions, and all of those things are rolled up into those choices. I think as authentic as the experience can be for the viewer in terms of really experiencing this character's loneliness, this character's, how she aches for love, how she aches to be seen, and then, you know, the series of horrendous events that follow that she manages to fight through and survive. As long as that's a genuine experience for the audience, I think they're going to walk away feeling like they've been taken out of their own life for, you know, a couple of hours, which is all, you know, we all want that right now. We all want to escape a little bit. And I think this has the potential to help people really do that, because it is fun and it is also disturbing and thought-provoking. And again, like, it's a metaphor for something that I think a lot of us can relate to, just being chained to a relationship that's trying to kill you. Yeah, most of the time, yeah. I am dragging our lovely stunt guy, who we call Mowgli, but his name is Boyan. I am dragging him, and he's a very fit man. He's not a huge man, but he's very fit and very muscular and deceptively heavy, especially for me. And so I am chained to him, and I do my best, but sometimes we need Desi to do it for me because she's incredibly strong also. But even she has trouble sometimes. She's like, this shit is hard. So at the end of the day, it actually is, I'm always surprised at how sore I am. My back is lit up, like I'm bruised up, I'm dying, I'm so sore, I need massages. And that's from carrying my little homie around all the time. For me, the way, you know, it's all about actual experience recall. And I've had my feet on ice before. I grew up in Tennessee, where the winters are pretty brutal there. And I also lived in New York for a long time. And so, you know, it's that going back in your mind to experiencing that thing. And the brain is interesting, where you don't have to actually be doing something for your brain to feel as though you're doing it. All you have to do is see it in your mind, in your mind's eye. And as long as you can do that, then it becomes real. You know, my feet aren't actually going to get frostbitten, but the rest of my body reacts as though it's really happening. In order to get this movie made, obviously we've been getting tested often. I get tested every 3 days. I came and I had to go through a quarantining process where I stayed in a hotel for a while alone. And we keep up with the tests. The whole crew gets tested every 3 days. Everyone's wearing face masks or face shields. There's someone whose designated job is to just put hand sanitizer on your hands all the time. It is definitely an unusual alien universe that we're in right now. But we're getting it done and we're being efficient, so it's working. I love being on the studio, obviously, as opposed to doing this in the real snow. That's a relief for me. And then the Bulgarian crew has been amazing. Like, all of us that are from America have talked about how efficient you guys are and like polite and kind and like just happy to do the job. And we don't get a lot of those experiences necessarily. It's not always like that. So it's nice to be like, hey, we need to get this, this, and this done. And then it gets done. And we're like, it got done? Because it doesn't work that way all the time. You know, a lot of times it's hard to accomplish things or to get things done on a schedule. Things are always late. And, you know, this is running like a really well-oiled machine, and that's thanks to the crew. I think Till Death is about breaking free of prisons that have either been self-imposed or imposed by others and deciding that it's no longer going to work for you. I mean, I hope they see little pieces of themselves in it, and I hope they have fun, because there are aspects of it, as crazy as it sounds, that should be fun. And, you know, I hope they get an escape from the things that are bothering them or haunting them in their lives right now. I hope they have an escape, and at the end of it, they're like, that was a good experience. I'm so glad I watched that movie. I was happy for 2 hours. I love it. I'm working 6 days a week. So in terms of being able to see Bulgaria, I haven't gotten out that much, but I didn't realize it was so beautiful. I've never been, so I had no idea what to expect. And I got out one night and walked around with my friends, and I was like, God, it's so open and so like warm, and everybody's so kind, and it's like a really great experience being here. So I love it. I hope to come back when we're not in the middle of a pandemic.
It's been really good. Amazing crew. The snow set is just incredible. I wrote to the art department to tell them how impressed I was. Just the level of detail, the frosting on the rope inside the boat shed, and I mean the work that people have put in is just extraordinary, because it takes hundreds of people to contribute to that frame. So many people have such skilled and craftsman like input that it's wonderful, and it really helps with my job, because it just helps you pretend that the world is real, you know. And the shoot's been great. Everybody's fantastic on it. Everybody's very happy to be working in these very strange times. So yeah, it's been good. It's quite strange to be in the snow. But it's 30 degrees in there, and you're sweating just standing there, and then you have I got this shirt on, another shirt, a hooded jumper, a jacket, gloves. It's strange, but you walk in and there's icicles that are hanging from the edge of the roof around the boat shed, and they're perfect. There's tiny flakes of frosting on every piece of rope. I took photos because of the level of detail that you might not even see necessarily, but it contributes to the overall feel of it, in the frame. Like the work that they've done building that set is really extraordinary. I'd have to say Yeah, it would probably be the snow set. I like the attic rather, but the snow set and the exterior of the house set is just mind blowing. And you go in there and it's got the way they've lit it. You feel, you know, it's tricking your brain because everything is telling you that you're in the snow, except you're sweating and it's really hot and it's the middle of summer. Well, I felt originally in the script, Bobby was very unkind and aggressive towards Jimmy, and I felt that there was maybe a bit of an inconsistency about how Bobby related to women and how Bobby related to men. And so I proposed to Scott and asked if we could change it so that, you know, perhaps Bobby's mother was, you know, very unkind and inflicted a lot of pain and trauma on Bobby as a child. So, you know, he has a bad relationship with women, but then I asked if we could change it so that Bobby and Jimmy's father, who's, you know, probably also a criminal, but is a man that both the brothers greatly admire. And then I asked if we could have Bobby and Jimmy's relationship as a bit more paternal, and where I soothe him and you know, it's very much like I'm a father figure to him, and I care deeply about him, and I love him deeply, and it's very you know, whenever Jimmy is freaking out, Bobby is soothing him. It's okay, come here, it's okay, you know, which I thought made things more interesting, and then also made it a greater loss for Bobby when Jimmy dies accidentally at Bobby's hands. And because it's a greater loss, then for him to lose Jimmy, then it's the stakes and the pain and the trauma is higher, which makes him a greater threat to Emma, and then makes, you know, our hero's victory over Bobby, you know, even more of a victory. It makes him a more worthy adversary. He didn't really specifically say the type of movie he wanted to make. We just kind of spoke about some things in the script about how to amplify and some elements and improve some elements and change a few things. And I guess we spoke mainly about that and the brothers' relationship. That was more what we spoke about, as opposed to, you know, there wasn't really any discussion about what type of film he wanted to make. But I could see from his short, The Coat Maker, that I could see his style and get a sense of him. And then, you know, once we spoke, I was just, excited, because I liked where he was coming from, and we just had a good chat, you know. I just felt like we got on well, and I understood where he was coming from. And then once I got here, I was just, you know, all of my expectations were surpassed once I saw how he was on set, and you know, the shots that he chooses, and I think he's going to make a great film, and I think he's going to really do well in the game. Yeah, probably 102, when Jimmy dies. There's just so much that happens. There's 3 fights. So much that happens, and then because just the way the schedule fell, we started shooting that on day 3, which was, you know, it's probably the biggest and most pivotal scene in the film. So that was a bit tricky because, you know, on day 3, even a week in, you're still going, do I have this guy? I don't know if I've got the character yet. You're kind of still finding your feet. But yeah, it was, you know, Megan and Jack and everyone were great. And, you know, we got it in 2.5 days. And I thought that would be challenging, and it was challenging to shoot, but I think we got a good scene. Bobby Ray is somebody you wouldn't want to meet in an alleyway at night, as Emma finds out. He's he's somebody who doesn't get that he's responsible for his reality and the things that happen to him, and he's very much, he seems to blame everyone else for his problems. He's a pretty tortured individual. He's very dangerous. He's quite comfortable and casual with killing and inflicting pain and harm, and he's very obsessed with revenge to do with Emma, and even though that he was the one that attacked her in the alleyway 10 years ago, and he's brought all of this on, and that was another thing that I spoke to Scott about. Was I asked if perhaps the brother's father, who they adore and love, got sick while Bobby was in jail, just to add to his his need for revenge and his loss and the things that are driving him to come after Emma. And he's very he adores his brother, loves him deeply. It's a very paternal relationship, and I'm sure he feels a bit of guilt for not being there when he was away in jail, and the fact that their house got repossessed, that the house that they grew up in, and so family being his father and his brother are everything to him, and he obviously has a problem with women. But yeah, family, his brother and his father are the things that drive him, and he's always motivated by those guys.
Are they bicycles or something?
No, I don't have a favourite prop. I'm just in a great admirer of the craftsmanship that has gone into the sets and the props as well. There's just art department have done an incredible job on this across the board. So yeah, I think I would, rather than having one favourite item, I'm in awe of all of the work that they've done. Jimmy is absolutely Bobby's weak spot, because he loves him as his little brother, and he wants the best for him, and I think he also needs Bobby's love. He needs Bobby to seek. He needs Jimmy to seek his counsel. They both get something out of the relationship, but there's only one person in the world that can challenge Bobby or disrespect him, and that's Jimmy, and get away with it and not die. Yeah, Jack's great. He brings so much energy to the set, to the character, and we very much support each other, and he's very generous, and so we both want that relationship to pop, and he holds the space for me, and I do for him, and we're very, very supportive. So it's been great to have him. I love being on set. There's no I feel so at home on set. There's no I don't know. I just walk onto a film set, and I love that it takes all of us to make that frame. And I just, on a film set, I'm like, these are my people, and I feel very much at home. And I love working. I love telling stories. I love mostly the collaboration. I love that all the preparation that I do, that everybody does. I find that I still get on set and we discover new things that we could have never envisaged in pre-production. And you discover on set a new way to do a scene, or something different about the costume, or a change to the story, and that can only occur once we're all here and everybody has an input together, because other people have different perspectives and they see things that I could never have really seen, and that's exciting. And you know, even though COVID has been challenging, and but you know, Millennium have done an incredible job here. We feel very safe. Everybody's just doing what needs to be done so that we can all keep working and make this and have, you know, everybody go home every night safe and not have any complications. And it's challenging for everybody, and it makes things take longer to shoot, but you know, we're at work, we're getting to work. We're so lucky that we can come to work and we can create and work together. It's not specifically, that's what I was trying to say before, it's not like he said I'm doing this or this. It was lots of little things that he said compiled together that made me get where he was coming from. I guess it's more like, you know, every script might have some issues, every script has good elements, and he was, the things that he wanted to change and improve, I really liked, and I thought he really gets it, and he's just a good guy, and he's smart, and I wanted to work with him and thought it was a good project to do it. I just love it. I love being at work. I love being at work on something that I care about, that I'm excited by, and I'm excited by the people that I'm working with, and you know, I'm learning a lot. I love learning on every job and getting better and better, and you know, I'm very much just in awe of everybody that's working on this. It's a great experience because, you know, we're working. There's so many of us that are not working because of COVID, and you know, I love being at work when there isn't a pandemic, but I feel even more grateful being at work at the moment because, you know, it's look, it's a miracle that any TV show or film gets made, you know, but let alone to be shooting in the middle of a pandemic is, you know, I feel very, very lucky. I think a little bit, I miss seeing people's mouths, you know, because you're just getting this little bit here. But, you know, hey, it's a small price to pay, you know, to be able to, you know, come to work and create and play and do all the things that, you know, we love doing. It's a privilege.
The emotion of it was, I mean, it was such an amazing feeling to finally come to an end and finish this. It felt like it had been such a big journey with a lot of speed humps along the road. I mean, I was back here in March when we got shut down and then had to go home and wait for this all to kind of blow over, and then finally we got to come back here, and it was a completely different world coming back here during a pandemic. So to have been able to come back here, shoot everything safely and efficiently, get everything that we needed, and more than, you know, create something better than we could have ever hoped for. It would have been, it was probably a couple years now. My manager actually sent it to me. It was, and I thought I'd read a few pages before going to bed one night, and the next thing I know, I'm at page 20, and this woman is attached to her lifeless husband, and I thought, holy crap, where can this possibly go? And next thing I know, it's like 3 a.m, and I'm finishing the script, and emailed my manager in the early hours of the morning and said I'm in, and then it took about 58 meetings to convince the producers to let me in. I think it was really figuring out the brothers and how they can be incorporated into this story and helping really propel this character further by having them come in and building that climax up to the third act. I had a pretty strong imagination on how to propose that to them. Yeah, it felt like, you know, it's such a powerful, shocking moment that in that scene where he shoots himself, and it was really trying to figure out how we can keep that story propelling, but also, you know, create a few more shocks along the way, and really letting the story unfold slowly throughout it. So, you know, one of the key things that I really thought would be great is the dark room, and visually kind of showing this traumatic past she had, and also these happy memories she had from the night before, revealing that through these images, to me just felt right, and creating, you know, making more of a character, this house more of a character. I think it really, you know, from the night when they're there to the next day, we really tried to change the feeling of it, you know, and we had so much warm lights, candles everywhere the night before, and then the next day it's freezing cold, there's blood trails everywhere and snow, and it was a bit more challenging than I was expecting to shoot all that. I definitely wanted to have a more classical feel with the visual aesthetic, and, you know, having some smooth camera tracking shots, and keeping it very steady up until the moment that he pulls the trigger. And then we turned into this handheld, shaky cam for a little bit, and really to try and get us into the point of view of Emma, and how, you know, her world has just kind of fallen apart around her, and creating this kind of war zone-like quality to that scene. I thought it was very vital to really enhance that shock value. Well, when I first landed, we were moving so quickly back in March, and they were giving me lists of different cinematographers, and we were having meetings after meetings. And when I came across Jamie, I just happened to be watching a television show that he had done the whole season for. And so, you know, I was actually a bit of a fan of his, and we spoke for a while. And the visual aesthetic of this television show was nothing like what we were doing. So, you know, we sat down and we spoke for a while, and he had a pretty clear visual idea of what we were wanting to do, and I thought it was exactly what I had in mind. So it was a pretty easy decision after I had spoken to him and realized that we were on the same page. And I had heard how hard of a worker he was from the TV show's producers, and that I knew that he was going to help push this film further than I could ever hope for. I think meeting with the producers, especially the first time, you know, the first few times I met with the producers, it was over Skype. But the first time I actually went to LA and met them face to face, that was a really big deal for me. So it was, and the biggest thing I think was just the preparation. You're essentially going in with a monologue for 15 minutes and describing scene by scene how you see the film and changes you'd like to make along the way, and giving them the film in their head essentially, so they understand that, you know, how you want to shoot it, the emotions you're wanting the audience to go through at every point. Yes, I think so. I mean, the team here is so incredible. So the stunts and the roller coaster of a ride that we go through with Emma as she's being chased and trying to outmaneuver and outsmart these brothers. I think it worked out better than I could have ever hoped for, because when you put into you have Jamie behind the camera, and the incredible lighting, the incredible sets, and these incredible actors, you're ultimately getting something far better than you could ever hope for. And I really think that the last act of this film is going to be pretty epic. Yeah, well, day 3 we actually had to move to this. It's scene 102, the infamous scene 102, because it was 10 pages of the brothers and her and a dead body, all up in this bedroom, and she's essentially trying to figure her way out. And there was so much going on. We have a gun, we have a bone saw, we have a safe, and the complexity of this scene was far bigger than most of the other stuff we were shooting, and it was day 3, and the actors were definitely not happy that we were doing it so soon. But I kind of thought if we could nail the scene the way we wanted to do it, it would set a standard for the rest of the film. So I was excited to come in and do that fairly early on, and it also gave these actors an endpoint to their character that I think then they could work their way back and know where it was leading. So I think the first day was definitely scary for them and for me, but ultimately I think it really actually enhanced the rest of the film, knowing where we end up and then being able to work back a little bit further. Having Megan Fox on board, I knew that she was going to embrace these action sequences 110%. But I think what really surprised me was just the emotional openness that she brought to this role. And you know, there are some scenes in here that she's really breaking down, and you really feel for her in these moments. And then ultimately the action sequences she just nails. She gives 110%. We did discuss potentially having her drag around a dummy, but ultimately the actual the dummy itself that we had and the movements that we had with the arms, it just didn't feel real. And so we knew pretty early on that she was going to be dragging around a real body. And poor Mowgli, the stunt man, he went through so much for this film, and he was incredible. He was rolling downstairs and being dragged from A to B upstairs, and he had to do it all without flinching, which I think is incredibly challenging. And yeah, underwater scene was such a big challenge for the stuntmen and the actors, and the wider shots when they're sinking down and everything was such a huge challenge because Mowgli couldn't equalize his ears, and so for 4 meters he had to descend until the last moment when we called cut, and then he could do it, and then he had to wait for the oxygen tanks to get to him as well. So I really felt for him that day. It was an incredible challenge to shoot under there. And again, that was similar to scene 102, where we were shooting that pretty early on, and I think the actors were a little bit nervous, but they were pretty tired by the end of it, but I think it will be worth it. We find Emma at a crossroads at the beginning of the story, and there's a whole lot that's kind of happened to her leading up to this moment. And we see that she's in love with Tom, but she's in a position of fear and unable to leave her husband at this point. And we slowly start to reveal why that is, and why she's kind of feels trapped inside this marriage. I think she had a very traumatic past, just as Mark came into her life, and I think that helped him get close to her, and she felt supported and safe by his side until ultimately she realized that it was the wrong decision. I definitely think this story is empowering, and Emma, you know, she has to face against her biggest nightmare and this psychological scarring that she has from this guy so many years ago, and now he's come back to haunt her. And I think she really loses her supports along the way, you know, people that she relied on her whole life, and now she's helpless, she's alone, and she has to build, you know, she has to find that strength within her to face off against him. And one thing that I was really wanting to steer away from was make this a revenge film. To me, this was about someone trying to survive, and through that growing stronger, and through that facing off against this traumatic past and overcoming it. So I definitely think there is an empowering story to tell here. Well, early on in the process, and actually before I came onto this project, I was working for a charity about mental awareness of children that were in domestic disputes. And through that, I started to discover these horrible statistics of family violence. And I always felt that, you know, a lot of these horror movies and everything, it's about an unknown person coming in, but it really, you know, in our society today, you're more likely to be hurt by a loved one than a random. So I had that in the back of my mind, and when this script come across, I thought it was an interesting view of this through a genre perspective. So when I came on board, I actually had a few meetings with an expert in this, and she gave me a lot of articles to read, and my two concerns were, how does someone find themselves helpless and trapped in a relationship similar to this and feeling like they can't leave, and how does someone really hurt someone who they claim that they love? And so she gave me so many articles to read, and through that research, I found a few things that I actually sent Owen through that I thought would really help his character. And when he came day one, I really feel like you can see that these articles that he was reading actually helped benefit him tremendously, and I really felt like he embraced the character in that particular way. Owen was great to work with. He's just, considering he's like the biggest psychopath, probably the second biggest psychopath of the movie, he's just always joking, always having a laugh in between takes, and he's someone that, you know, as soon as the camera's rolling, he switches it on and he's back in this character. But him and Amel made it an extreme challenge for Emma to try and keep a straight face in some of the takes, and there were a lot of takes where she would burst out laughing with, and I think the crew were starting to get a little bit frustrated when we had to reset the cars and all the extras out in the New York backlot. Callan was great, a great choice for Bobby Ray, because he really tried to approach this evil two-dimensional character with finding any sympathy he could in any direction of how this character got to this point. And I think he just kind of added depth to this character. One of the things that I think one of the choices he brought to the story that I think was incredible was the way he manipulated Jimmy to continue on. It wasn't through threats at the start, it was through love, and, you know, kind of giving him a kiss on the forehead and telling him everything's going to be all right, we're so close, let's keep going. And it really gave him this three-dimensional quality where you saw this, you know, nurturing side of him, and at the same time this completely evil, psychopathic side of him when he's trying to find Emma, when he has her in his grips, and by the end of it, you know, when he loses Jimmy, you really feel that emotional snap that he has, and that you realize, oh God, it's not about the money, it's not about anything now, it's just he wants Emma dead. And I think, you know, him as that character, it's pretty terrifying, and I think Megan was finding him pretty terrifying in a few scenes as well. Bobby Ray is the stuff of nightmares. I think he's a manipulator with a healthy dose of psychopathic tendencies. I always felt that Jimmy was someone who could have had a normal life with a normal job, but he was roped into this world of crime by his brother, and I think someone, you know, he idolizes his brother, and it's kind of caused him to follow a darker path than he probably would. And in some ways, I find him very similar to Emma, where he feels trapped in this relationship that he can't leave. And as we have Emma trying to cut herself free of this lifeless marriage, we have Jimmy trying to break free of this of his brother and trying to find a different path. Jack was great portraying Jimmy. I remember the first day he walked in, and we'd been shooting with Callan and Megan for a while now, and he came in and I said, okay, you're going to get hit with this golf club. I just need you to react like this, and then I'll call cut. And he said, got it. And then Megan comes out, swings the golf club, and he goes flying through a door. He just launches himself, slams on the ground, and all the crew was just looking around like, what's going on? And we called cut, and I came up to him and I was like, hey, look, you don't need to do this. And he's like, no, this feels better, right, for my character. So from take one, he was giving 110% and really throwing himself literally into the role. You know, Jack really, with every person that we were auditioning for it, he was the only one who really brought a sense of, you know, that final scene where he points a gun at his brother. Everyone was kind of very aggressive, but you could see that he was emotionally split. He was upset that he was forcing himself that he was forced at this point to do that. And I think he really brought a whole new emotional layer to that character that, to me, elevated in ways that I really wasn't expecting. Well, back in March when we landed here, you know, everything was moving along. We were only 10 days out from the shoot, and it was the day of my birthday. The producers brought in a cake for me. I blew out the candles, and then they informed me that we had to shut down production. So it wasn't the greatest birthday I've had, but we flew home, and during this time, it was really just having meetings with the first AD and the cinematographer and producers and figuring out how we can move forward safely, and coming back here so many months later to shoot, it was a completely different world, you know, and the studio's, you know, mission here is safety first, and you really feel that with everyone, with masks, with getting tested every 3 days, social distancing, and we had to divide our departments into certain units so that way we could at least isolate any sort of breakout. So it was very important to try and keep the crew safe, and out of everything we've accomplished during this shoot, I think our greatest achievement is making sure that every crew member was kept safe during this shoot. When I arrived in Bulgaria, the plan was to shoot this as practically as possible on location, and back in March there was snow that we could potentially do it with, but we quickly realized that putting Megan Fox barefoot in the snow was not the greatest idea, and so it quickly became apparent that in order to do this movie right, we had to build the house and the backyard, the boat shed and the garage all on stage. And so that was a huge mission in itself. And the team, the Bulgarian team here were incredible. They embraced it, and we had the backdrops there. We have, you know, this fake snow, and they had brought in 100 truckloads of dirt to actually build the gradient from the house to the boat shed. And it was incredible. The first time I walked out on that set, my body felt a little bit shocked, like it felt like I should be feeling cold right now. Yeah, we did. I mean, firstly, with Callan and Jack, they were wearing so many layers, so we had to figure out ways to make it seem like they were wearing layers, but taking it off. So we cut off a lot of their sleeves, we shaved a lot of the fur off the jackets, and just tried to keep them as cool as possible. And then every now and then you'd have to just whisper in their ears, like, you know, it's -3 degrees right now, and and so they after a while, like, you know, it quickly became, especially when we're outside, it quickly became you know, especially Jack, you know, he's rubbing himself like this, and once the actors really started to kind of dive into playing into that cold, especially for Megan, you know, her character's part of this, the conflict isn't necessarily against these guys, it's against Mother Nature. She's facing off against Mother Nature. When I first had a meeting with Megan, one of the things she brought up in the original script was that she puts on the wedding dress. And at that stage, Mark was just in boxers the whole time, and he leaves the wedding dress, and that's the only choice that she has to put on. And Megan brought up this, that we felt like we had seen that done already, and it didn't feel like we were bringing anything fresh and new, and suggested, what if she puts on a tuxedo instead? And I thought that was that visual of giving Mark a tuxedo, and then he leaves the wedding dress, and her saying, screw that, I'm not gonna let you decide what I'm gonna wear, and putting on his tuxedo. To me, that was such an interesting visual that I just couldn't help but embrace. So then it became a challenge of how she was gonna put it on. And so I remember having a meeting with the producers, and we're trying to figure it all out. And one of our producers, David Leslie Johnson, actually said, what if, if he's wearing the tuxedo shirt, she can actually slide it through the chains onto her own arms, and it would be inside out, but it would fit her well. And I think I got the email about 4 a.m, and it woke me up. I was like, oh my God, yes, we figured out how to do this. And I was a little bit nervous about her putting on the size clothing of Owen with the shirt and the pants. I just didn't want it to seem comedic, her walking around with these baggy clothes. And so the first time we actually did a costume test with her in the pants and the shirt, I was amazed at actually how well it fits, and it was almost too stylish. Working with Jason on the script, it's always a challenge when you come in as a director and you have your own ideas for someone's story, and that he's clearly spent so much time and energy on this story, and then to have to come in and ask for certain tweaks and everything, it always feels I always feel terrible about doing it. But he really embraced it, and we had many meetings in different bars and in cafes about how we could enhance the story and find a middle ground between us. And he really was an incredible partner on this project, and I think he added a whole lot to it. And one of the things, especially once we knew we had Owen and Amel in as Mark and Tom, we didn't have a scene where they were together. And so one of the first things we were discussing was, let's have a moment where we have them two in the same room as Megan, and having her feel trapped inside there. And it quickly became apparent that the best idea was Amel, meeting them in an elevator and having them stuck in this elevator. And it's a really great scene that he wrote for it. And pretty much, I think it was one draft. We didn't really change it after that. He nailed it the first time. And it's actually one of my favorite scenes out of the whole movie. Yeah, it's always, casting is always a nervous process for me, because it really is so vital to get that right. And making these decisions and searching for the right cast members was a difficult time. And back in March, we were probably 10 days out, and we still hadn't locked in some of these cast members. And it was very important to me to find the right brothers. And I really wanted to find Bobby Ray first, and then kind of backtrack and find Jimmy. Weirdly, we actually found them both at the same time, and they were just perfect for each other. It really felt like there was a connection between them. And Callan is an Australian actor, so I had actually grown up watching him on television shows and as a teenager, and really admired his work. So to have the chance to actually work with him on this project was amazing. And Jack, when he read for the role, he was just incredible. He understood this character. With the 2 scenes that we gave him, he knew the character so well. And then finding Mark and Amel, or finding Mark and Tom, was a bit of a challenge in itself, because they were only in it for such a short duration, and we really needed them to bring this kind of spark to their roles, and Amel and Owen were just the perfect choices. The elevator scene was such a a pleasure to have these actors in there, and actually the challenge was keeping them from not improvising too much. Amel and Owen are so witty that they're just bantering back and forth, and we have Megan trying to, she's there as we're pushing in towards her and past them, and they're talking, and they just kept rambling on, and she's trying to keep a straight face, and she's trying to be panicked, but they would just throw out these lines every now and then, and she would break and laugh, and we'd have to reset. But it was one of those scenes where it's so small, and the challenge of shooting in an elevator, it feels like a simple scene, but you're removing these walls and you're shooting from different angles, and it was important that we got the coverage that we needed. And we actually had Les, one of the producers, as an extra in the background. I asked him on the day if he was okay to do it, and I said it'll be quick, and then 6 hours later I think he was getting a little frustrated that he was just standing in the background trying to pretend that he's not listening to a conversation. The short films that I was working on were very small, intimate crews. So coming to a feature film and having such a massive crew was very intimidating for me. But having the right heads of department in here with Haristo as our first AD, Jamie as the DOP, Artie doing the script supervising, it really empowered me, having these people with so much knowledge, so much experience, and coming into my first ever feature during a pandemic was stressful enough. So they were very welcoming. They really, they were collaborators, true collaborators, and in some ways, when you're not worrying about, on the small projects, you're worrying about catering and you're worrying about getting everyone there on time, but everyone here it's just such a well-oiled machine here in Bulgaria and at the studio that a lot of these things that are on the back of your mind are now gone, and you can really focus on the creative stuff. You can really focus on your department, which was incredible. I usually have a very strong I have very strong visuals in my head of how I want the film to be. So the biggest challenge and the biggest thing in preparation is preparing yourself so that you can convey it to the team, because we have such a large team here, so you can convey it to them as clear as possible. So very early on we started storyboarding with an incredible storyboard artist, Krista, and we really had a collaboration there from the get-go that if you look at some of the storyboards and some of the visuals we got, it's almost identical. You could almost cut this storyboard together and you would have a very similar movie to what we actually captured. So having her on board early helped convey that to each department, and I didn't realize how vital that was until we were deep in prep, when you've got car stunts and people jumping on cars, getting smashed through it, and tying 3 different locations together into one sequence and trying to match the lighting and the camera angles and everything like that. So it was definitely, preparation I think is key, and I pride myself on being as prepared as possible, knowing exactly what I want, and then when I arrive on set, allowing anybody to throw ideas out there and feeling the flow of what feels best. Weirdly, one of the hardest scenes to shoot was the first time we see Emma in the tuxedo shirt with the bow tie, and she's dragging her husband on the wedding dress, because it was so vital to visually reveal this by seeing the wedding dress, seeing his feet coming up, and then revealing now she's wearing this shirt. But the challenge of the location was that there was a window on one side, there was a window on the other, and so anywhere we put the camera, we were creating a shadow on her face. And it was the first time that I froze up and I just didn't know how we were gonna shoot this, and we had like 40 minutes to finish this scene, and I took Jamie aside and I said to him, this isn't the shot we needed to get, and we quickly brainstormed and we found a way to capture that, but it involved having special effects come in, visual effects come in and clean up some stuff. But it was weirdly, we just needed her to drag the body from the door to the stairs, and it became such a challenge to shoot compared to everything else. It's weird. I think this is I like to think of this as a high concept thriller wrapped as a bit of a horror, because to me, on the surface it feels like a horror, but there's a lot more depth to the character and the tension and the romance that she was, leading up to this. It feels like the first 10 pages are a bit of a drama, and it feels like we're heading in this different path. So then suddenly when Mark pulls out a gun and shoots himself in the head, we do kind of dive into horror in that moment. But ultimately, I think we're shifting through different genres as we go through the story. A lot of my favorite movies entertain the audience. They give us a roller coaster of a ride while still shining light on particular issues and hopefully creating a discussion on these particular issues. So I'm really hoping that Till Death does that. I would love to, open discussions about certain things and domestic violence and traumatic PTSD, the people that are going through this, trying to live day to day with this traumatic past. But at the same time, creating a story that's terrifying, entertaining, and action-packed. I think it's going to be an emotionally exhausting film. I think when she climbs out of the hole at the end, the audience is going to be trying to catch their breath. So I'm hoping it leaves them breathless. I think something that I've never been able to do as a director was have the amount of action, the stunts, and really just from when she wakes up in the bedroom at the end all the way to the very end of her climbing out of the lake. I really wanted it to be non-stop, and I had never really done an action sequence like this. But she's in the bedroom, she's tied to her husband, she's fighting herself free, she's running down, getting into a car, she smashes into another car, then she's collecting Bobby Ray onto the bonnet as he's now tied to the husband, and then suddenly it's continuing. You feel like, oh, we're getting to the end of this sequence, and she smashes into a boat shed. She's, there's a chase sequence along a frozen lake while he's dragging the body, and you think, all right, now we're getting close to it, and then it continues on. We fall through the frozen ice, they're sinking under the water, and it's one of those moments where it grabs you by the throat and it just doesn't let you go until the very end. There was a particular scene that we had to shoot where Megan was in the boat shed, and all she had to do was, she had the wedding dress, she looks at it and she had to throw it in the boat. We were shooting a shot after she threw it in there, and I needed her just to kind of throw her arms, pretend she's throwing the wedding dress into the boat shed. And it was just one of those moments where she cracked up laughing, and she was just like realizing just how weird this moment is as an actor, having to pretend to throw something. And the crew and everyone, everyone was kind of laughing at this moment of her trying to pretend to do it. And in the end, we couldn't actually, every time she tried to do it, she would just crack up laughing. So we had to figure a way around it. But, being as dark and heavy as this film was, there were a lot of moments where the crew and the cast were having a bit of a laugh. And I think you need that release. Having a female lead protagonist, to me it was vital to lean on the collaboration of a lot of female crew that we had, and it all started from pre-production with Krista doing the storyboards, and as we came into production we had Megan, who was bringing so many fresh ideas to this character, and she had her own very strong idea of how to have this character act. And then we also had Adriana, our script supervisor, keeping us in check and really thinking about the forest through the trees. and all the way up until post-production, where we have our illustrious editor, Sylvie Landra, who's going to be cutting this together. And I think it was very important to lean into the collaboration with them and hear their perspectives of this story.